to Wednesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where I think today we have hit upon something that ought to be fairly extraordinary. The puzzle on the screen is called German Whisper Cages by Emre Kalotoglu. Now, Emre's featured on the channel a few times before, always with magnificent puzzles, but Totally Normal Cat has left a comment on this puzzle on Logic Masters Germany, saying that this is one of the best puzzles Totally Normal Cat has ever solved. Now, you will know the regard with which I hold Totally Normal Cat. The cat is some sort of amazing genius, so if this is that good for Totally Normal Cat, well, it ought to be an absolutely magnificent puzzle, and I'm looking forward to having a go at it. A really, really short rule set as well. Now, before we get cracking with this, I just want to say a huge thank you actually to, well, all of you. I mentioned in Monday's video that my brother has been running marathons for ME, and loads and loads of you went and donated to the charity effort that he's got running, and I'm just blown away by that. So thank you so much on behalf of both of us, and also thank you very much to those of you who watched yesterday's video and saw my small tribute to my great friend Matthew Slingo, who tragically died very young and recently. And it was the funeral yesterday. It was a surreal, well, it was awful and magnificent at the same time. Magnificent eulogies, and awful that it had to happen. And anyway, many of you wrote very kind comments on yesterday's video, and I'm proud of many things about Cracking the Cryptic, but one of the things I'm most proud of is this community who, you are so kind, and, I go through the comments after every video we do, and so clever, and, so many corners of the internet are so awful, but this one really is something to cherish. So thank you all very, very much for that. Sorry, needed to take a moment there. Right, back to puzzle matters. What have I got for you to tell you about? Well, I've released yesterday my solve of the Sudokutown Murders over on Patreon. Now, my goodness me, that is not an easy puzzle. So this is the one that Lorik and Nordy created. With the enormously long rule set. It's a rule set that is, well, it's so prodigious I could barely get it on the screen. But I did manage to make my way through the puzzle. It did take me 100 minutes to do so. So, yeah, sorry about that, but that solve is now over there for those of you who are interested. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that over on Patreon at the moment, we have got the world's hardest classic Sudoku, this Philip Newman creation. We have had lots of entries, and I've been sending them on to Philip, and Philip is telling me that the quality of the entries is extraordinary. So extraordinary that he's decided to give, well, we're going to give the prizes, but he wants to give a prize for the most beautiful solutions. That's one thing, and also the funniest solution. Apparently, some of the solutions we've had have been very amusing indeed. So if you aspire to win either of those prizes, you've got till the end of the month to send us in your answer. Now, that said and done, let's get on with German Whisper Cages and see what Emre Kalotoglu has got in store for us. These are the rules. Normal Sudoku rules apply. In cages, digits cannot repeat, and sum to the cage total, where the cage totals of two cages that share an edge must differ by at least 5. So this is a sort of spin on the normal German Whispers rule. Now, the normal German Whispers rule applies cell by cell, so adjacent cells have to differ in value by at least 5. Here, it's the cage total. So let me just think about this. So that cage there, whatever that totals to, it has to be 5 different at least from whatever that totals to, and 5 different at least from whatever that totals to, and 5 different from whatever that totals to. I think that's all of the ones that one sees. And this one has to be 5 different from this one. This one it has to be 5 different from a lot of things. 5 different from all 4 of those orthogonally connected cages. Yeah, okay. I don't know. This seems like it's going to be quite tricky, but we shall have a go. Do have a go yourselves. The way to play is to click the link under the video as usual. Now I get to play. Let's get cracking. Now, let's get cracking, and we shall start by what shall we look at first? I can see that we've got 3 complete cages entirely comprising box 8 and 3 complete cages entirely comprising box 7. So I'm wondering if we can use the secret. Now the secret is something I only tell my favourite people, but if you're watching this video, of course you're one of those people. And the secret is that any complete box of a Sudoku, indeed any complete row, any complete column, will, because of the laws of Sudoku, contain the digits 1 to 9 once each. And if you add up the digits 1 to 9, you get 45. So I know that these 3 cages here sum to 45. And therefore, what do we know? So therefore their average is 15. But we can't have 3 15s because obviously 15 is not 5 away from 15. These are the knowledge bombs we get to share on this channel. So I could increase 1 by 5 and reduce 1 by 5, and we could say that this box might contain a 10, 15 and 20 cage. That would work. Now, but that's not forced, is it? Because you could have a 15 cage, a 21 cage and a 9 cage, and that would still add up to 45. Oh, now hang on, I have... Oh, that's very interesting. Right, so there is a fundamental difference in the quality of information being provided by this cage compared to, or this box compared to this box. And that is because in this box, the 3 cages all touch one another orthogonally. I think that's true. No, it is true. Whereas in this box, the cages keep their hands to themselves a bit more, and this one, for example, doesn't touch this one. Now, why is that interesting? Well, that means that if whatever this one is, these 2 cages can sort of go the same way. So what I mean by that is, imagine that this was this cage added up to 11. Then we would know that these cages have to sum up to 34. So they could both be they could both be 17. So if that was an 11, these could both be higher than the 11 cage, and they would both be more than 5 away. So 17, 17, 11 would work. Whereas for this one, you couldn't make these 3 cages 17, 17 and 11, because whichever one the 17 was, it would be touching another 17. That's really, really weird. So maybe... I'm wondering whether we're meant to start with the... You see, the 1-cell cages are interesting, because that effectively means, let me just go to the pen tool, that means that those 4 cells there can be viewed as a German whispers line. Same with that, same with that. And that's because each of these is a single digit, we have got oscillation going on along row 5. What do I mean by oscillation? Well, you can't put 5 on a German whispers line unless this is a proxy for a German whispers line, because each of the cages is a single cell digit. This could be a high or a low digit. Let's say it's a low digit. Now this has to be greater than 5 now, because it has to be 5 away from 1, so that could be a 6, which actually couldn't be, but you see what I mean. Now this would have to dip below, now that would have to go above 5 again, so you get oscillation. But I don't really see how, I mean, apart from not having a 6 in the middle of it, it's not really long enough, I don't think, for it to be terribly useful. Maybe we should start where we started when I was showing the example, because it did strike me as quite interesting how many, or the size of these cages in the top left. I mean, that's a 7-cell cage. So, yes, okay. Yes, I might be able to narrow down the value of this domino, I think, using a sort of an extended secret. So what I'm thinking about here is that in the top left of the grid, let's just highlight all of these cages and that little domino there. So that is 4 different cages, but each of the cages individually is massive, and each of the cages touches every other cage, I think. I think that's true, isn't it? That certainly does, that certainly does, and that does, yes. So that means that in terms of our German whisper sizes for each of these cages, they are a bit restricted, because none of them can be within 5 of the others, and each of them individually has to be massive, because, well, the minimum I can put in a 7-cell cage is 28, because that's the triangular number for 7. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 is 28. So each of these cages is 28 or more, but has to be 5 away from the next one. So if this was 28, that one would have to be, or well, we don't actually know. It could be that one, or even this one. But if that was 28, this one could be 33, say. And that one could be 38. And then that one could be 43. So the minimum value of the highest purple cage is 43. So that's quite interesting, because that means a lot of things, actually. Because 2, 3, 4, 5. No, that is not a 9-cell cage yet. So this is an 8-cell cage. So none of these cages have 9 cells, which means none of them can add to 45, and yet one of them must add to a number that's 43 or higher. So there is a 43 or a 44 cage amongst the purples. And why is that interesting? Well, it has to be the 8-cell cage. And it has to be the 8-cell cage because if you try and make the 7-cell cage add up to 43 or 44, you will have a problem, because a 9-cell cage would add to 45. So a 7-cell cage needs to miss 2 digits out, and the minimum it could miss out would be a 1 and a 2, and 1 plus 2 adds to 3, so the minimum size of a 7-digit cage is 42. And that is not the same as 43. So this cage in the corner is a 43 or a 44 cage, and is missing, therefore, either a 1 or a 2. Right, but that still doesn't tell us the value of this domino, which is where I thought I was going to start this little expedition. And why do I think I can work out the value of this domino? Well, it's because there's not that many different values that we can ascribe to all of these cages collectively now. Because if we make this a 28, if we minimize all the cages, we would get 28, 33, 38, and 43, which adds up to 142. And I could do that quickly only by using averages. So all I did there was note that the 28, 33, and 38 have an average of 33, and I can do 3 times 33 quite quickly. So 142. Now that's annoying. Actually, that is very annoying indeed, because 142 is not the number I was hoping for. And that's because I know the total of all the digits in those 3 boxes. that must be 135 because that's 3 complete boxes of the Sudoku. 45 times 3 is 135. So if we minimize the cages, this domino would add up to 142 minus 135, which is 7. Which is not, I don't think, very useful because, you know, if we'd worked out this was a minimum value of 17, that would be very useful because we could write 8, 9 into it. But 7 is not good. And the problem is that we can approach this the other way around. So if I maximize the total of each purple cage, so I start with a 44 instead of a 43, and I go 44, 39, 34, 29, then I must get 4 more than I got when I got 142. So I must get 146, which would make this have to add up to 11. Ah, this is not good. So this is either 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11. So this domino. And I can't even use that on this line here as a German whisper because, of course, although that domino is adding up to 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11, that cage is adding up to, well, it's adding up to 28, 29, 33, 34, 38 or 39. So it's actually completely irrelevant for the value of those cages because none of these cages can get within 5 of that total, even the minimum one. 28. No, actually that's not true. If that was 28, that could be influenced by that because that could get to 23 or even 24. So that's 11, 10, 9, 8 or 7. I'm sorry, I think I've spent 15 minutes misleading you here. I don't think this is how we're meant to start this puzzle. So far I've not got anywhere down here, I've not got anywhere up here. I had a brief look at the whisper. It cannot be these cages, can it? Is there some subtlety around the fact that, no, if that's a low digit, let's say it's a 1, then one of these could be 6, one of these could be 11, but they could be as high as 17. And if that's a high digit, if that's a 6, that could be 11 and that could be 16. Yeah, so actually, and I'm not even sure, that can't be a 9 and then have, yeah, if that's a 9, that could add up to 5 less than 9 and could add up to 4. So that could be 1, 3, that could be 4, and then this could go higher than 9, and that could be 14 and be 6, 8. Ah, this is very difficult indeed. Wow. So how do we get a grip on this then? This line, which looks a bit like 2 stone hinges next to each other. So if I, oh, I see. So that, yes, okay, right, there's a small point. These 2 cells have to be a high and a low digit. So that means this domino here can't really add up to a low number because it's going to, like, if we minimize these, make them 1 and 6, you can see this must be 5 away from 6 in an upward direction. So that's adding up to at least 11. Aha, right. So let me just try that another way round. If that's a 4 and that's a 9, yeah, you can't make this low. This can never be low because if we try and make this add up to 3, say, it's going to be too close to 4. So whatever this is, this gets pushed up. And the reason that might be interesting is surely that's pushing that up. Yeah, so one of the stone henges has to have a very high top. That's what we're deducing here. Hang on, let me get rid of that colouring and show you what I mean. Let's colour that in orange and those in blue. Now, whatever these are, the minimum, yes, maybe we think about minimums. So if we minimise everything, in fact, that's not the right way round, is it? Because that would force this to be a 1. So let's not do that. Let's minimise it that way round. If this is a 6 and a 1, the minimum value for the orange is 5 away from 6. So the minimum value for this is 11. But that means that this domino here has to be greater than 11 by 5. So that's at least 16. And these sort of dolmens, I think that's the word we're looking for on the top of the stone henges, have to be, one of them has to be high. One of them has to have a 9 in it, I suppose. We could deduce that. So if we minimise this whole line, 6, 1, we have to oscillate. So 7, 2. This would be 11 minimum, and that would be 16 minimum, which actually couldn't be because that can't be 7, 9. Oh, but that's a bit annoying. Okay, so that means that we could go something like this, 8, 3, and then that could be 7, 9, I think. And that could be adding up to 11, and would have to be 3, 8. So we, okay, so that, it doesn't resolve itself, but one of these dolmen, one of these dolmen has to be quite high. There we go. There, I've said it. We have a high dolmen in this puzzle. So does that mean? I'm just wondering if I can now prove that one of these, one of these dominoes, I can't remember what the sides of a Stonehenge thing are called. Stela, maybe? But maybe, I'll use Stela as a proxy for the correct word. But maybe one of the Stela, or the 2 Stela underneath one dolmen, have to be 6, 1. Let's just check that and see if that's true. So if we didn't have a 6, 1 in one of these dominoes, let's go 2, 7. Now, and we're saying we're not having 1, 6 in either. So let's go 2, 7, 3, 8, which I've just realised is the wrong way round from an oscillation perspective. I've got 2 higher digit in the middle there. So this is fine. Everything is 5 away. Yes. Okay. So go 7, 2, 8, 3. Then the minimum this would be 12. And oh, that doesn't work. Hang on. That's interesting. Yeah, this doesn't work at all. Right. This is good. This is good. We have actually found a deduction. That's because the minimum this can be is 12, which means the minimum this can be is 17. Now 17 is impossible because we can't use 8, 9. And if this wasn't 8, 3, it would be 9, 4, and that still doesn't work. So if we're trying not to have 6 in, it doesn't work. Unless, of course, no, it still doesn't work the other way around. So if I try and make the middly, the lower dolmen, if I put the lower dolmen on the 8 side of this, it still doesn't work. Because the problem is this dolmen needs to be 5 away from 8, which is even worse, because that means that has to be 13. And once this is 13, that has to be 18, and that's simply impossible to get to, because you can't double 9 the dolmen. Don't double 9 your dolmens. Now, so that, right, this is good. So now I think it is true to say that one side of the Stela is a 6, 1 pair, and we know the order of it, because you can't put 6 in the middle of a German whisper line, because you get the double 1 problem. So either this is a 6 or that is a 6, and either that is a 1 or this is a 1. That is forced. Now, The problem is that the other side of that, we tried 2, 7 and 3, 8, and they both worked. I'm not sure whether 4, 9, no, 9, 4 might not work, because I'm going to need, I need a 9. Don't I? Oh, hang on a minute. Yes, here is another small point which is probably important. The dolman that sits, that sits on the higher stealer has to be the high dolman. That is what I'm going to claim. Because if it's not, even if I minimize this and make this 7, 2, if I try and put, if I try and make this the high dolman instead of this, you can see that this then would have to be 12 minimum. Oh no, that works. Oh, what am I talking about then? Sorry, I was thinking that when that's 8, 3 and 9, 4, it doesn't work, because that becomes 13 and that then has to be 18. And it's worse if that's 9 and that's 4, because that's 14 and that's got to be 19, which is even more silly. But I've just actually realised that 7, 2 is fine. So if that's 7, 2, and this is the lower dolman, it can be 12. Oh, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work, but for a weird reason. This is really beautiful, actually. If you try that sequence and then try and make this dolman the lower dolman, it has to add up to 12, because it can't add up to more than 12, or this would be adding up to more than 17. And it can't add up to less than 12, because it must be 5 away from 7. So it has to equal 12. But once it's 12, this has to be 17, which makes that an 8, 9 pair. And now it can't add up to 12 because it can't use 7, 8 or 9 in the domino. So it doesn't work. So that tells us... Oh, sorry, I didn't want to get rid of that. I don't know which way round this goes yet. That tells us that whichever side has the higher stealer on it also has the higher dolman. So, is that useful? I've got a feeling that gives us a 7, 8, 9 on one side of this. Because if that's 6, 1, we know that this is 11 or 12 then. So we know these are very high numbers. They have to be from 7, 8, 9. But we know there must be a 7, 8, 9 on the whisper as well. Yes. So one side of either this 2 by 2 or this 2 by 2 has a 7, 8, 9 triple in it. 24. Right, and I'm just wondering if that's putting too much pressure on this L pentomino. If that's 6, 1, and that's 2, 7, and that would have to be 8, 9 then, because we said we've got to put the high dolman on the higher stealer. So this would be 7, 8, 9. So right. 7, 8, 9. What would that add up to? That has to be massive. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. This is really interesting. Let me try and show you why I think this doesn't work. If this is 6, 1, the minimum value of this German Whispers part now is 7, 2. And we have to put 8, 9 here. And we have to put 8, 9 here, remember, because we need this to be at least 11. 11 or 12, so this is at least 16, and it can't be 16 because the 7's gone. And if we go higher than 7, 2, let's try that just to see if we can eliminate this. If we go higher than 7, 2 and we go 8, 3, now this could be 11, this could be 16, so it comes down to 7, 9 in these cells, but now we've got a 3 here instead of a 2 before. So we've still got the 789 triple, we've just got a higher digit that accompanies it. And 9 won't work because we checked that before, although I'm now doubting myself, so I'm just going to double check that 9 doesn't work. 9, 4, we know this can't be the low dolman now, it's the high dolman. But yes, this needs to have a 9 in it because this is 11 at least, so that's got to be 16 at least, it needs a 9. Right, so the lowest I can make those 4 cells add up to would be very specifically this combination, which is 26 in the box, which means this needs to be 19 and no more. But it's touching a domino that adds up to, this cage adds up to 17. So it must be 5 away from that. Now it can't be 5 away on the low side because it's got 5 digits in it, so it's adding up to at least 15. So it must be 5 away on the high side, which takes it to at least 22. And 22 plus 26 is a lot. It's 48. And that cage, well, that box only adds up to 45, so we're far too high. And the only other way of changing that for the better would be 8, 3 there, 7, 9 there. It gives us a tiny bit more wiggle room in the sense that now, although this adds up to 27, this has to add up to 21 or higher, not 22, because this is only adding up to 16. So 21 plus, what was it? No, it's so it gets to the same total. It gets to 48 again. It's too many. So this is the wrong way round. And if it's the wrong way round, we actually get a digit in the grid, which is fabulous. We get 2 digits in the grid because now we know that our stealer must come the other way. So the 6, 1 must be from this side. So that's 6, that's 1. Which means this is a high digit. This is a low digit. I don't think these can be 9s, can they? Because we worked that out. If we put, we're going to have to put, because we worked out that the high stealer has the high dolman on top. We know there's a 9. We know there's a 9 in one of those 2 cells. In fact, we know that those cells are from 7, 8, and 9. So we now know there's a 7, 8, 9 triple, and because the 9's up there, we know that's not 9. We know that therefore is not 4. So we've almost resolved the stealer and the dolman problem in the middle box. We know that this adds up to 11 or 12. And it can't involve 9 or 6. There. I don't think that's actually very useful. 11 or 12 here. And let's just check that works now. I think it's going to give the El Pentomino plenty of flexibility. So if that was maxed out, 12, 18, 19, this would have to add up to 26, which is absolutely fine. And 26 is miles away from whatever this is adding up to. So there is no pressure. All the pressures come off this box, which is good in one way because the box can work, but bad in the other because I don't really know how to fill it in. So this is magical in a way, though. Magical in a bad way. It's sort of, because although I've got digits and restrictions, I've actually done nothing. I've done nothing. I know that this cage now has to add up to a moderate number at least. Hang on a moment. That's at least 24, 26 there. And that's got to be a moderate number. And that had to be at least 7. 26 and 7 is 33. So does... that's it. Oh my goodness me. Right, this is absolutely ridiculous. I think this works. Right, let's think about this box overall, which adds up to 45. How can we keep the various components of this box? And there are a lot of them. We've got 2 Steeler, a Dolman, a 3-cell cage we've not really thought about, and this domino, which we know had a minimum value of 7 from the work we did at the start of the grid. Now, how can we keep this down to 45? Well, if I make that 7, which is the least I can put into it, I can make that a 7 domino. Let's give that a colour. So this is 7. Those 4 cells are a minimum of 26. So these 6 are a minimum of 33. That means that this cage must be 12 or lower. But look, it sees this digit. Or it sees this cage, which is a 7 or an 8. So if this is an 8, that has to be 13, which is going to blow the total for the cage, the box. So that must be 7. This must be 12. 7 can't be next to a 3 on a whispers line, so that becomes a 2. This becomes an 8-9 pair. That becomes a 3-4 pair, because it can't be 1-6 in this position by Sudoku, and it sees a 2 in its box. So this must add up to 7. And that's not a 7, obviously. Well, it's this little cagey, this domino thing adds up to 7, and these squares have got to be a 1, 5, 6 combination, adding up to 12. And this box, this box actually works, and I have digits in the grid and restrictions and everything. How do you go about setting this nonsense? It's just ludicrous. So now, what's this? That's 17. So this is 12 or 11. And I don't think we know which. It must have a 7 in it, actually. It's 7-4 or 7-5, isn't it? Adding up to 12 or 11. It must have a 7 because it sees 6, 8 and 9. So these digits are plentiful and not restricted. That's 7. So that's telling me yes, okay. So the top left of the grid, which we looked at right at the start, and when we minimized every single value in the top left, we ended up with 7 in this domino. So we now know. We might not know the order. Well, no, we might not know the order, but we now know the value of this cage in the top left, because that's an 8-cell cage and must now be a minimal 8-cell cage, which was the 43 version of itself. So there is no 2 in this cage. And these 3 cages here have to add up to 38, 33 and 28. So one of them has not got an 8 or a 9 in it. The 28 one will not have an 8 or a 9. Okay. Bother. So, where do we look now? Oh, I'm getting messages on WhatsApp. Sudoku, that's what we'll do next. 1s and 6s have to be up there, look. So there's no... right. That suggests that we have at least... What we've done so far might be correct, actually. Because this 7-cell cage has not got a 1 or a 6 in it. So it adds up to 38. Because it adds up to 45 minus 1 minus 6, which I think is 38, which was one of the numbers that we said we had to aim for. So this box, or this cage contains all of the numbers except 1 and 6, and so 3 and 4 are already in it. So these cells have got to be 2, 5, 7, 8, 9. Those are not 5. those two are not 2 or 7. Which is about as useful as a chocolate teapot, I fear. That digit is interesting, actually. That digit there has only one home in box 4, I think. Because where does it go in box 4? It doesn't seem to be able to go... Well, yes, the way to think about it is it can't repeat within its own cage, so it's not in any of those cells, and it can't repeat in its own row, so it must go here. So this is a 3 or a 4, and it's the same as that digit. You can probably lose the purple now, actually, and maybe we'd lose everything, lose all the colour, which is a little bit sad chromatically, but never mind. So these two are the same. So this is 1, 6, 3 or 4. That's weird. Why can't I see that more quickly? That's so strange. So yeah, this little collection of cells here is, it doesn't, for some reason it doesn't look like it to me, but it is a 2, 5, 7, 8, 9 quintuple. So these squares have got to be from 1, 3, 4 and 6, and that's somehow giving me a 1, 3, 4, 6 quadruple in row 4, which means that there's no 4 in that cage there. So this becomes a 12 cage, which is very cool. And, well, okay, and now where do we put 2 in that row? Only there. So these cells in the remainder of this L pentomino are 3, 4, 8 and 9. 3, 4 pair in that row. So this is now 8 or 9. There's definitely a 5 over here. Okay. And now I'm getting stuck. So where do we look now? I feel like we've had a bit of a run for the last, oh goodness me, how can it be 40 minutes into this video? That is ridiculous. I honestly, if you told me it was 10 minutes, I'd have gone, yeah, that's about right. That is the sign. That is why puzzles are so wonderful. You can just get lost in them. So, where shall we look now? Does it matter that this is a 12 cage for those two cages? Well, it would be very nice if we could conclude that one of those cages had to be greater than 12, which we can. Ah, this is lovely. Right, yeah. Okay, so this is a 12 cage. How could both of these cages be lower than 12 then? Because this 12 cage sees that cage and it sees that cage. It touches both orthogonally. So this cage, say, could be a 7 cage, best case. But this cage obviously touches this one as well now. So this cage, if it's lower than 12, has to be 2 or less. And you can't make that cage add up to 2, because you can't do that. That means one of these cages has to be greater than 12, which means it must be 17, because it must. You can't make it add up to more than that. And if it's got to be 5 different from 12, it's got to be 17. So there is an 8 and a 9 in one of these dominoes. And that means that the other cage, so one of these cages is massive. The other one has to be 5, at least 5, lower than 12, so a maximum of 7. Which means that this cell, oh no, yes, it does mean this. It does mean this. So one of these is a high cage. I don't know. The problem is I don't know which one it is. So let's just imagine it's this one. Now this cage has to be a low cage. Now that means it's 7 or less. But it can't be less than 3. Because the minimum I could put in this cage would be a 1, 2 pair. So this cage would add up to 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7. No, maybe I'm wrong about this actually. I was thinking I was going to be able to I was going to be able to work out what that was, i.e. whether it was a high or a low digit, because we know things oscillate along German whispers lines. And now I'm not sure I can. Because what I'm worried about is that if this was a 7 cage, for example, why couldn't that, say, just be a 2 or a 1? But if that was a 3 cage, oh, it can't be an 8. No, it does work. Oh, that's really beautiful. Yeah, this cage here, whatever it adds up to, because you can't put an 8 or a 9 in either of those squares. In fact, you can't put 6. Hang on. So right, the simpler way to look at this is there is a 7 on this whispers line, because it sees 8, 9 and 6 and it must have a high digit on it. So one of these digits is a 7 and one of them is a 1 or a 2, because it's got to be 5 away from 7. Now, yeah, so now if this is 7, we've broken the world. Because if this is 7, what are we going to make our low cage add up to? It's got to be 5, it's got to be lower than 12, and it's got to be lower than 7 as well, so it would have to add up to 2, and that's impossible. So what I was confusing myself about was that I was thinking I could make this 8 and make this 3, but I can't make this 8 because there's an 8, 9 already in the box elsewhere. So this is a low digit and this is a high digit, and that is very interesting indeed, because that gives me a 7 here and a 5 here amongst other things. And that, oh, I don't know. No, I don't. Oh, that 8, 9 was for example purposes. I don't know this is 8, 9. Or do I somehow? No, okay. So do I? Okay, well, let's come back to the low cage. Whichever one of these is low has to be 5 away from 1 or 2 and 5 away from 12. So it's either 6 or a 7 cage. So if this is a 1, it could be a 6 cage, but it would have to be 2, 4. If it's a 2, it has to be a 7 cage, but it could be 1, 6 or 3, 4. Then it couldn't be 2, 5. No, okay, this is not. I think this is running out of steam now. It's really interesting, but I don't think I can do anything else. Okay, let's try somewhere else. We've got a 12 cage here touching 3 different cages. Right, so you can't have... Yeah, that's interesting. So in these 3 cages, they can't all be higher than 12, because they'd have to be 5 higher than 12, which would mean that their minimum value would be 3 lots of 17, which is 51, which is more than 45. So you can't have... It's not possible for 2 of these cages to be less than 12 either, because then you'd have 2 times 7 is 14, and the other cage would have to add up to 31. So exactly 2 of these cages are higher than 12, so at least 17, and one of them is less than 12, so very tiny. And this one can't be very tiny, because the one that's less than 12 has to either be a 7 cage or a 6 cage, because it's 3 cells large, and the minimum 3 cells can add up to is 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6. So that there is a cage down here, which is not that one either. Oh, this is right. This is beautiful. This is so beautiful. Right. One of these cages is lower than 12. It's not this one. When I say lower than 12, I mean 5 lower than 12. So a 6 or a 7 cage. A 6 or a 7 cage must have in it a 2. So it's not this one. Now, a 6 or a 7 cage also must have in it either 3 or 4. So it's not this one. So this one is a low cage. It's got a 1 and a 2 in it for sure, and then a 3 or a 4. So That's definitely not a 1. That's what we're learning from that. There must be a 1 and a 2 in this cage. And these two cages now have to be... Now these two cages now touch each other, which wasn't necessary before, but this is the low cage. So these two touch each other, so they have to be 5 apart, and also 5 different from 12. So the minimum of these would be 17 and 22, which is 39, which means that this is a 6 cage. This is so clever. It is ridiculous. So just let me go through that logic again. This is a 12 cage. These two cages have to differ from each other by 5 and from a 12 cage by 5. So 17 and 22 would be the absolute minimum for these 6 cells. 17 and 22 is 39, which means the maximum this can add up to is 6, but so it must be 6. You can't make it add up to less than that. So this is 1, 2, 3, which doesn't seem to do anything up there. One of these cages, yes, one of these cages has a 4 in it, and it's this one. So that cage can't add up to 22. So this cage does add up to 22, and a 22 cage in 3 cells contains a 9, and yes, that does nothing, but it means this cage is either 9, 5, 8 or 9, 6, 7. And this cage, I see, and this cage takes the 13 that isn't used by the 9 cage. So this is either 4, 5, 8 or 4, 6, 7. Okay, so this is a 22 cage, so that presumably affects these cages. Yes, because these can't now add up to more than 22, because 5 more than 22 is 27, which is more than 24, which is the maximum for a 3-cell cage. So these add up to less, and they touch each other. So this is like the opposite logic to what we've just done. The maximum value of these cages is 17 and 12, which is 29. That's the maximum value. So the minimum value of this is 16. Oh, sorry, that doesn't seem to be very good at all. Right, can I use this one then? Because this is 6, so this has to be greater. So this has to be at least 11. Which is not interesting at all. Oh dear. So now I don't know what to do. Can we do something in the top left again? 7 here. Yeah, okay. There must be a 7 in this cage, because that added up to 43. So it's missing a 2. It's not missing a 7. So there's a 7 in that domino. That might be important, but I can't see why. This cage added up to what? I can't remember now. It's missing 1 and a 6. So this is adding up to 38. So the two other 7 cages, this one and this one, actually I'm going to highlight them. Those cages there are adding up to this was 38, so they're adding up to 28 and 33. Ah, that's beautiful. Right, so I can tell you something about this one. And that is that this one adds up to 33. Because if it didn't, it would add up to 28. And if it added up to 28, it could not have an 8 or a 9 in it. And if it couldn't have an 8 or a 9 in it, where would you put the 8 and the 9 in column 6? And the answer is only there. And you can't put them both there. So that wouldn't work. So this cage now, which will bluify, is not the 28 cage, which means this one is. So the bluified one is the 33 cage. So this one is missing 2 cells that add up to 12. This is just, right, this is absolutely beautiful. So this cage doesn't have a 7 in it, I want to say, because, I might be wrong about this, but I think it looks good. The orange cage hasn't got an 8 or a 9 in it, so it does have a 7 in it. And the 7 in the orange cage looks to me like it has to be there in that domino, because it can't be here because of this 7. So now the blue cage can't have a 7 in it, I don't think, because it sees 7 knocks, this 7 domino knocks it all out of here, and this 7 knocks it out of there. So if there's no 7 in the blue, there's no 5 in the blue, because we need 12 to be knocked out of it in 2 cells. So that means 5 is in one of those cells. Hang on, yeah, okay, and if there's a 7 in one of those two, that's not 7, so that must be the 7 in the in the 43 cage. And that means, what does that mean? The answer is I don't know. So this is a 28 cage, and it's not got 8 or 9 in it. So 8 or 9 is a little tiny bit restricted in row 2. It's got to be there, 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 or there. And any one of those would look, any one of those looks quite interesting, because it's creating, like that one would create a pair in the column. That one would force this box to be an 8-9. That one would create an 8-9 in the column. Oh, no, that one can't be. Sorry, that one can't be because there's an 8-9 in those 4 cells there. So that one's not. So 8-9 in this row is either here, here, or here, which is a bit interesting. Right. Okay, that I can do something with, I think. Yeah, okay. So one of those 3 cells there, let me just highlight them in green. Two of these cells are 8s and 9s in row 2. Now it's not possible actually for those two to be an 8-9 pair. And the reason for that is that that creates a big problem in row 1 of the grid. Because if this is an 8-9 pair, this domino here is not the 8-9 domino in this box. This one is. So we get an 8-9 pair here and an 8-9 pair there. So where the question we should ask ourselves now is, where are we going to put the 8s and the 9s in row 1 of the grid? Now this can't be an 8-9 because of the 8-9 pair here. So we have to put them both in this cage. They both have to go in there, but that's impossible because this also needs to be an 8 or a 9. So you can't make this work. And if you can't make it work, this is good because it means that this cell must be an 8 or a 9. We don't know which of these is an 8 or a 9, but because this is an 8 or a 9, that's an 8 or a 9. And that means that those are not 8s and 9s. And that means that's not 8 or 9. And that means that that is a 5-6 pair, I want to say, because it's got to be, this has to be at least 11, because it's got to be 5 different from 6. But it now can't be any bigger because 7, 8, and 9 are in its column. So that's a 5-6 pair. We need 2s, 3s, and 4s, I want to say, in this column. Can't see if we can resolve that. Anyone got any ideas about whether we can resolve that? The answer is no. So, okay. So what does that have implications for this domino? This domino needed to be 5 lower, at least 5 lower than 12. So this is a 7 or a 6 domino. Can't see how to do that, I'm afraid. Right. Oh, for goodness sake. Right, sorry, I've missed something here. I don't know how long this has been available for, but probably a while. Where does 2 go in row 1? Remember, 2 can't go in the 43 cage. There's a 1, 2, 3 triple there, so it's not there, and it's not definitely in this cell either. So that's a 2. Bobbins. So that's not a 2. That's a 1, which actually relinquishes the pressure on this domino, because this... Oh, although we do know now... No, it's actually all right. This is okay. Because I was about to say, we know that this domino is 5 different from 12 at least, so it's a 7 or a 6. It must be at least 6 because of the 1. It has to be 5 different on the upper side of that. But it can't be 6 now because 1, 5 and 2, 4 are not available. So it's got to be 7. It can't be 1, 6 or 2, 5. So it's 3, 4. So that's a 3, 4 pair, which means this is a 5, 6 pair. Which means that... this is beautiful. Right. Look at the blue cage. The blue cage is missing a 5 and a 7. It's got every other digit in it. But the 3s are looking at those, and these 3s are looking at those. So that's a 3 by the power of magic. This is a 4 now by the power of Sudoku. I won't award that magical status. This is a 1, 6 pair. This one was the 28 cage. This is missing 8 and 9. So this has got to have... this has got to have 3 in it, doesn't it? So where is that going? It's not here and it's not here. No, actually, sorry, I don't think that's very interesting. This one has to have 4 in it somewhere. And this 4 here is ruling out those cells. So there must be a 4 in one of those 2 cells. Yeah, the geometry is powerful here, actually, because remember, this one also needs to have 8 and 9 in it. So this cell, whatever that is, let's make that purple. Where is that going in blue? It must be up there. So this means that these squares here are 4 and purple. Why is that green? Oh, that was when I was looking at 8s and 9s. I think I'd better get rid of greens now. So this is a 4 purple pair. That gives us 4, 8, 9 in the column as a triple, which means this square must be the counterpart to that one. This is 5. Oh, this is beautiful. Good grief. This is 5 or 6. It's not 5. We've already ruled 5 out of blue. So that's 6. Which means that's 5. What does that mean? That means that... I don't know. I've had an hour! No, I can't have had an hour! This is ridiculous! No, sorry, I can't see it. I'm sure there's something I can do along here, but I can't see what it is. Oh, can I do more down here now? No, all I've done is resolve the 4-3 pair, which was actually... Oh, 3. 3, look, has to be... It can't be there, it would repeat in the cage. So 3 is in one of those 2 cells. This one, I've got to keep reminding myself, the orange one doesn't have 8 or 9 in it. This one doesn't have 2 in it. That 2 goes there. Oh, so that... Ah, yes, okay, that's interesting. look at row 1. Now row 1, yeah, think about what these digits are. So in row 1, these digits are required to be in row 1 somewhere, but they can't repeat in the cage. So these 3 cells have to be in these 4 cells somewhere. But we know that these are not overlapping with 2 because 2 doesn't appear in this 43 cage. So these 3 cells have to be the same as these 3 cells. Now the 7 that we've already got. So these 2 cells here have to be the same as those 2 cells. Well, that one definitely can't be a 1 then. Because if that's a 1, you can't put 1 in the top row of the grid anymore. So that must be a 6, which means that must be a 6. That must be a 5. So now that's not 5 anymore. And this did. So now we can ungreenify those cells, and we know those are the same. So this becomes 4, 8, or 9, which gives us a 4, 8, 9 triple in the row, which means we now know what those cells are. This is ridiculous. So now we've got 2, 3, 6, 7, I want to say. 2, 3, 6, 7. Now that means this square, oh, that's a 1, which we already knew once we got this as a 6. But we should get this digit as well. That must be 5, because that's the only digit we've not placed in orange that belongs in orange. That's still not actually doing very much. So these cells now are the other cells in row 3. So they are 1, 2, 8, 9. That's not 2. I don't believe it. It just doesn't seem to do anything. I know. No. How do I do this? This digit goes up here. I don't know. Sorry if you're all shouting at me because you can see things that I can't. That cell's not a 2. Let's take the small victories. Oh, no, I was about to say where does 2 go in this box, but I don't think I know, do I? Hang on. 2 has got to be in one of those 2 cells. And 2 has to make an appearance in this cage. So the 2 in this cage is in one of those 2. And the 2 in this cage is in one of those 3. Oh, okay. Bother. bother. Okay. Maybe I'm not meant to be looking up here. That is also possible. Can I do this one yet? That's 22 still, isn't it? No. If I could get that, I might be able to do it. No. What did we say about box 7? We said that these cages had to add up to... Oh, I managed to get something about this cage, didn't I? So this was 22. These touch each other, so they have to be lower than 22. So they can be 17 and 12 as a maximum, which is 29, which means these add up to 16 or more. But they can't add up to 16 if these are 12 and 7. If these are 12 and 17, because 16 and 17 and 16 and 12 are not 5 away from each other. Oh, good grief! This might be where I was meant to look. You know, that's restricted. That is restricted because if the maximum I can make these is 29, the minimum this is 16, but it cannot be 16. So these have to reduce down, but they have to reduce down in lockstep because when I reduce one of these, like if I reduce the 17 one to 16, then this one can't be 12 anymore because it needs to be 5 away from 16 now, not 5 away from 17. So this means that still is not going to work here. So if we reduce the 17 to the 16 and the 12 to the 11, we would get a 16 cage, an 11 cage, and an 18 cage here, but 16 and 18 are still too close together. They're not 5 apart. So that doesn't work. So we've got to reduce them again. So then, if we go to, where were we? We were at 70. So we've got to go to at least 15. So 15 and 10. So if we went to 15 and 10, it would work. 15, 10, and this would be 20. But I don't think it has to be 20. It has to be at least 20. But does it... If this was 15 and 10... No, because the problem there is now I've got to something that works. I can reduce the lock. There's no more lockstep. So I could do 15 here, and 9 here, and 21 here. And they're all 5 apart, and that works. So now so the minimum, yeah, so we have to force these down to a pairing that allows this to be high enough it can be 5 away from the higher one of these 2 3-cell cages. And the sort of optimal way of doing that is 10, 15, 20, but there's many iterations after that for these cages. So we know those are at least 20. Oh, that's quite interesting. Because they have to, this 3-cell string has to add up to at least 20, and it can't use 6 or 7. So it must have, yeah, it must have 8 and 9 in it, mustn't it? How could it not have 8 and 9 in it? If it just had 9 and no 8, it couldn't add up to enough. It needs to add up to 20. So this has got 8 and 9 in it, which means that's a 5. And that's a 4. And that's not 8 or 9. There's definitely 8 and 9 down here. Oh, I'll tell you something that's a simpler way perhaps of viewing this column. And that's to ask where 1 goes in it. Because you can never put 1 in a 3-cell cage that needs to add up to 20. So actually we could have just placed 1 at the top of the column. That's a 2 now, and then then we have to put 3 down here, so that becomes 3, 8 and 9 and adds up to 20. So this is 20, it is 10, it's 15, but we don't know the order down here. But we've got some more digits. We've got a 2 here. We've got a 5 here. We've got, what did we get up here? Was it the 4? Yeah, the 4. The 4 is a green number, so that's the 4. So now that's no longer purple. So this is the purple, and it's the same as that. That's no longer a 1. These are no longer 7. So these are 2, 3, so these are no longer 6. So, can we do better than this? That's the question. I don't know is the answer. That's not a 3. It sees a 3 in its column. So this is down to 2 or 7. That's down to 3 or 7. That can't be 3. That's down to 2 or 6. Oh, come on. I'm sure this is resolved as well somehow. These squares in row 1 have to be 3s, 5s, 8s and 9s. So these are not 5. So this is 3, 8 or 9. Oh, that's not 3. Picking away at these digits. That's beautiful though. How could this now is determined? It can't be 5, 8, 9 anymore. It would clash here. So that's 6, 7, 9. Good grief, that's 1. That's 6. That's not 1 anymore. So does that do... Yes, that gets me a 1 in row 3. 6, 7, 9 here. So this has got to be a 2. Which means that's a 6. That's a 3. And that's a 7. So that means this isn't 2. Sorry, I'm going very slowly here because I just don't want to make a mistake. That's 8. That must be resolved. Oh yeah, 8, 9 here, and therefore that's a 2, so that's got to be 9. 9 comes out of these cells. This has got to be 5. This has got to be 3, which means this is an 8, 9 pair, which means I've got an 8, 9 pair in that column, so that becomes 7. I've got an 8, 9 pair in this column. I don't know what else I can do, but this definitely feels like progress. That's got to be 4, 5, 8 now, because it was using the other way of getting to 13, which resolves this as a 9. That's an 8. These cells at the bottom of this column are the digits 2, 2, 6 and 7. These digits are 1, 4 and 5. And we know that something down here is adding up to 15, and something down here is adding up to 10. Oh, but we can't put the 2, 6 and 7 in the same cage and get to 15 that way. And we can't put the 1, 4, 5 in the same cage. So we've got to mix and match this somehow. So it's got to be 2, 7, 1. Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so that actually is resolved, because we can't put 2, 7, 1 in this cage, because you could put one of the 2 and 7 in, but not both. So this is 2, 7, 1, which means that's got to be the 1. That's got to be 2, 7. This has got to be 6, which should mean these two have got to be 4, 5 to make 15. Beautiful. So this works. That's not 1 anymore. 6 here means that's not 6 anymore. This is 5 by Sudoku of all things. Fancy making me do Sudoku, Emre. You are very mean. That's 5. That's 4, which means that's 5. Oh, whoopsie, I think I took the wrong thing out there, but I've got this double 5 here, so that's 5. That should be a 4, 8 pair. That's 4, so that's 4, that's 8. That's not 8. And somehow, some way, it looks like these two cells have got to work some absolute magic to disambiguate this whole puzzle. Let me just think about that. I've got 1 and 7, look, have to be over on the right-hand side of box 9. That's not 1. This is an 11 cage, so that digit has to be no higher than 6, and it can't be 6 because there's 6 already in the box. So this is a low digit, so that's a 1, 2, 3 or 4, and it's not a 4, it's a 1, it's not a 1, it's a 2 or a 3, and this digit is therefore not a 1 because 1 is not 5 away from 2 or 3, so that's a 1, that's a 1. This digit is a high digit, 7, 8 or 9. Can't be 6, so it's 7, 8 or 9, which is nearly good. 7 in the bottom row, can't go there, so it must go here. That's 7, that's 9, that's not 9. That's not 9. This is 2, 3 or 9, I want to say. I'm sure. It seems to be close to being resolved. Oh, this is not looking good actually. I might have made a mistake here because I don't see... How does this get sorted out? Oh, I see. Oh, that's beautiful. Good grief. Right. Look at this domino. Well, what it can't be is 3 here. Because if that's 3, that's got to be 8. Because it's got to be 5 away. And that would give this cell no value. So that must be 2. Which means that's not 2. That's 2. That's 7. That's 8 now. That's 9. Ah, that's 9. There we go. 9, 8. 8, 9. 9 comes out of these cells. 8 comes out of this one. I've got a 3, 4 pair in this column, which means that's the 7. This 2 is seeing this 2, 3 pair. That sees the 4, 3 pair. Oh, this is so beautiful. Good grief. Now, 3 and 9 down here, so that's the 3, that's the 9. That should be 8, that should be 3, that should be 9. There you go. Let's see. Yes, yes. Wow. Just wow. Well, that that's a ridiculously clever puzzle. I mean, the logic in that is to die for. It is sensationally clever. I can totally understand why Totally Normal Cat is raving about this one, because that really is, that's a very, very special puzzle, Emre. Honestly, it's so original, and it's Fistomaphelian in the sense that once you have the idea of coming up with this rule set, can you imagine it being done better than that? I just can't. I mean, it's so beautiful. The way we did all the whole Dolman-Steeler exercises here, and the way that sort of led on gradually and worked its way up into the top left, the beautiful ideas around these 3-cell sequences at the bottom of, well, all around box 8 and then box 7. Maybe I could have been a bit more efficient if I'd thought about this whole 16 thing a bit more clearly at the start. Well, not the start, but, you know, after about an hour and a quarter into the video. No, more like about an hour in. Maybe I could have done that a bit more quickly, but I'm not unhappy. I'm not unhappy to solve that, frankly. I think that was really, really difficult, but so beautiful. Let me know in the comments how you got on. I do enjoy reading them, especially when they're kind, and we'll be back later with another edition. Cracking the Cryptic.